Hello everyone. So today we are going to learn about RDS, which is a relational database service provided by the Amazon. So in this video we'll learn that what are the different databases that are possible to work on in the Amazon cloud. So let's start. So RDS is basically a web service which is provided by the AWS that can allow us to quickly create your relational database instance onto the cloud. So this is a fully managed SQL database service which is provided by the AWS, and it supports an array of databases. So there are multiple databases engines are available on which the customer can store and organize the data. It also helps the relational database management tasks such as data migration, backup, you can say recovery, patching, all the stuff that we need to maintain our database is fully managed by the cloud itself. So entirely if you work on to the relational database using clouds services, then much of the job has been already done by the providers. It also facilitates the deployment and the maintenance of these database into the cloud. So the cloud administrator can use use the RDS to set up and then to configure and manage uh, all these database onto the cloud very efficiently. One thing to understand that this RDS is itself not a database, it's a service that is basically used to manage the relational database which are used to handle the storage of the customer records. So RDS is basically a service which basically helps to manage the databases which are used to actually store the data. So with the help of RDS, the database instances are quickly created and configured onto the cloud. So the administrator can quickly create the instances, and as many instances which are required can be provisioned onto the environment. We have some limitations here that each customer can have 40 databases instance per account. So in one account, and it's not possible to create more than 40 instances of the database. Also, there is another condition, also you can say constraint, that uh, if a customer is using an Oracle or SQL server instances, uh, the user can generally have up to 10 instances. So if the uh, customer is going to use its own database with the BYOL facility, that is bring your own license. So if the customer is going to bring its own license to work on the database like Oracle and SQL Server, then additionally 10 more instances can be created along with the 40 databases which have the limit of this RDBS. So to summarize what the RDS provides to us, it's a basically a web service which provides an efficient kind of management on to the handling the databases. So normally when we want to uh, configure any database and to work on database, it requires many administrative tasks. It requires a lot of time to configure your requirement, and also you need to kind of do all the updations, patching, security, all things we need to provide and make our database very secured. But when we go with this RDS service will do everything for you. So everything, the entire environment, when we see onto the AWS environment, we will see that everything is pre-configured for us. The entire framework will make all the things which is required to maintain efficiently a database is intact there. We have to simply set all these conditions by just uh, click, and very small settings are required, and we can ensure that our database is fully configured and can be working in the in the form which we are looking for. And also when we go with the RDS, it supports various kind of databases which the company can work on. So different companies are using different kind of database. Some may be using the SQL, some may be using a MySQL, some may be using the Oracle or Postgres. So different databases are there. They have the different properties. They have their different features. So depending on the company requirement, the company can be working on any database, and this RDS can be used to deploy and to configure any of the database which the company is working on. Along with that, it can also provide the kind of backup features, and the company can easily maintain uh, calamity or something disaster recovery kind of scenario. So here in the AWS, it provides a kind of backup that can be done in the multiple availability zones, so within the same region. So let's say one database you have already created in one availability zone, and then you can also configure to make a backup copy of that into the other availability zone, so that in case of any disaster or calamity, you can easily uh, take over to the copy or the replica of your database, and your business will remain be, continuous. So it also looks for the business continuity issues, though it will charge for this. But as overall, when we are planning for any business, so this is something which is one option given to us, and that can be configured in a very easy and efficient way. And the entire services which have been offered by these cloud providers have been shown a very good kind of feedback has been shown onto the internet. If you go and check the the performance of these kind of RDS services for handling and creating or configuring the database by the AWS, you will find that it has shown a very successful, and they have proved their offerings, and the customers are very much satisfied. So we'll see that how the entire environment will look like, and how to make use of these services on the AWS clouds. So once with the help of RDS, when you are able to provision your instance for any database which you want to work, then it can be easily connected by outside or by the application that is allowed to access the database to retrieve the data and to store the data. So if you look at this figure, you can see that uh, some of the things like security and compliances, data durability and redundancy, performance and scalability, monitoring, alerting, automated patching and upgrades, backup and recovery. These are the very crucial issues are always there with the database. So the administrator or the one who is handling the database has to always take a very necessary steps, and must be always alert about all these things, and make sure that all these issues to be well taken care. But when we talk about the cloud environment, especially when the AWS and we are talking here, so everything will be taken care by the providers. Now, because of this excellent support from the cloud providers, the customers or the company who is using this facility can now only focus on the kind of business strategies. They can uh, uh, go and focus on innovation. They can just spend their time rather than on managing the things, but they can spend the time to find that how the business policies can be made in a better way, so that they can enhance their business. So the developers does not need to spend much time to handle this, but they can easily get their job done, because the entire uh, infrastructure and the supporting layers have been provided very easily by this environment. There's also a very good provision by the providers to migrate from one region to other region, or from one database to other database. So all this are very much available there into the environment. So The RDS database engines are of this kind, where you can see we have Amazon Aurora, and then MySQL, PostgreSQL, MariaDB, Oracle, and Microsoft SQL Server. So it supports all these database engines. So we'll see and how to configure MySQL. We will just have an experiment with MySQL, and similarly, all of them can be configured in the same manner. Though all I have there's some different functionality and features while configuring them, but as a whole, when we work on one of them, we can have an idea that how the others can be used and configured. If we talk about the pricing, since we are practicing with the free tier account, so we must be aware about what is provided within this account. So it is said that we can do up to 750 hours of one at the one copy we can create. Means if we want to create one instance in one availability zone with a very simple configuration, let's say T2 micro, and if you are using the MySQL, PostgreSQL, MariaDB, and then this 750 hours can be provided to you within the free account. Similarly, if you are using Oracle, if you are using SQL Server, and if you are using with their own license, so now here we have a provision that you can use these databases, and if you have the license to be purchased from the AWS, this is one option. Or if you already have purchased the license, if you have already had database license, means you maybe have working in your on-premise database and now you want to switch on to the cloud, so already you have purchased a license, so that license can also be used when you are moving to the cloud. So when you are estimating the total cost, the license cost will be deducted. So if you are using the license which is already being purchased by the company and not by the AWS, then these kind of databases can also be worked with 750 hours. Along with that, 20 GB of general purpose SSD storage is provided in this free tier account. And along with that, one can also have with the same amount of database backup through DB snapshots. These are the things which need to be known if you are working in the free tier account. Now let's see that how to actually use the RDS service onto the AWS environment. So let's see here. Now this is my AWS account. So here what is required, one thing is we need to go to the RDS, we need to create a database instance. Now one thing to understand here is that the root volume on which this DB instances are to be deployed is EBS. So you must recall that the root volume or the default volume of the EC2, the virtual machine that we have created, it actually has a default volume as EBS. So EBS is something which has already been attached with that with the EC2. So whenever we install this database, it must be installed on this EBS only. It not must be installed on EFS, that's a file system, or S3. So whenever you install any of the database, it will always be on the EBS. So uh, we will be creating an instance of RDS, and that to be then accessed through the EC2. Though we are not accessing the EC2, but with the help of EC2, we are actually creating the EBS, and on the top of EBS, we are having our database. So let's see how the things will work. So first we go to the RDS and configure our database instance. So first we can go, we have to go to the database, create database. So here we have two options are there. You can go with the standard create, where you can just configure all the options like the security, the backup, maintenance, or you can go to easy create where the necessary configuration is already given to you. So let's start with the standard create. And here we have different database engines that can be used for our database. So let's say we are going to work with the MySQL. So we'll select this MySQL. Now, if you select other options, then you may find that some of the things are changed here down, because it all depends on which type of database we are using. So you can just have a look. If you go with the Amazon Aura, then the things may have changed here. So you have with the Amazon Aura, these are the things which are supported, and which you have the option to provide which edition you want to use. When I go with MySQL, then we have this kind of options are provided to us. So you can explore yourself what actually the options are available with different type kind of database engine. Now when you are using MySQL, then you have a option to go with the version which you want to use. So many versions are available. So at this point of time, we are not much specific to the version. You can keep it default, and then you can scroll down, and then you can see which kind, means that you are using the database for what. If you're using for protection for the real time, then you can get all the thing which is required for a real time database. So you can go for protection. Now development and this test is again a kind of different template that provides you for the testing environment, where you can just test your application by accessing your database. So this is very much similar to your production environment, and will guide you or help you that to the developer team, that how the response will be coming, and how it behaves when the application interact with the database. And then this is the free tier. So in the free tier, we can also uh, do a kind of test, and we can have a feel that how the things are working. So when we are doing with the free tier, some of the options are not visible to us. For example, when we are using the production environment, means a database to be used in the real time scenario, then here we have this thing is their deployment option, multi uh, availability zone DB cluster. So it means if you are choosing this one, then you may find this multiple that basically that whenever you're creating a database in one region, in one availability zone, and at the same time we have option to create its copy in the other availability zone. This is basically for disaster recovery. But if you go for the free tier, then then you will see that this option is not given to you. That means all your means then you can only create your database in one availability zone within the region. Now keep in mind that when I say multiple availability zone, then these availability zones are in the same region. So in one region we have multiple availability zones are there. So when you are creating your database, you have the option that you want to have a copy of the available you want to have a copy of a database in which availability zones. So that you can set when we configure uh, our instance. So let's say we are using free tier here, or let us explore what are the options visible to us. So I'll choose this production to explore what different options are visible here. Then you have to uh, define here a name for your DB cluster here. So it's already given here, database one. And then you have to give the master username. This is used when you want to access your database remotely. Then this will be required. Then it will ask to provide you a password. So you want the system to generate a password automatically, or you want to give a master password. Let's say you give one password. So you can give any password here, but while keeping the password, you need to make sure that it does not contain a single quote, double quote, at the rate sign, slash. So these are the things which is required to give the password. Also, with every field you will find info is written here, so you can just get more details about the field. So it basically requires a master password which must be at least 8 characters, for example my password. So it's always good to go for the info so that you can get more information about that. Now, which kind of instance we are looking for? It's a standard class. So here we can go with the M class instance and R class instance. If you want to go for the memory optimized, means you are looking for a better RAM size, then you can go memory optimized class. If you're looking for a kind of general purpose, then you can go for standard class. So one thing is required here. When you go for standard class, you may check that it starts for 4 virtual CPUs, 16 gigabit RAM, and it can go up to 192 GIB RAM and 48 virtual CPUs when we select the standard. But when we go for memory, then you can see it can provide you up to 64 virtual CPUs, 512 gigabit RAM. So depending on your requirement, you can select this option. So I will go for standard. And then the next is the storage type. So here we can go for provisioned IO. So now we don't have the HDD options available. We can go for the SSD or IOPS. So if we go for this option, uh, provisioned IOPS, so input output per second to be processed here. So here minimum is 100 giga. So this is maximum is 65556 gigabits. And here if you see, this is minimum is 1000. So let's say I go for the minimum, and then do you want to go for auto scaling? If you select this option, then it will ask you the threshold value. Threshold value means at which kind of a threshold you want the auto scaling features. So we are leaving this auto scaling here. It's not required at this point of time. Then a VPC, you want a default VPC. You must be knowing that whatever the things we are doing on the cloud, it is done inside the VPC. Either you will create your own VPC and configure all the things which is required inside the VPC, create your VPC, and then the subnet inside the VPC, create your security group. So everything will be created for you if you are not doing it. So the cloud will provide for you. So I am going to use the default one. And but one thing to keep in mind that once database created, you cannot change its VPC. So every database must be inside on VPC, and that VPC you have to select at the time of database creation. Then subnet group. So inside the VPC we have availability zones, and each availability zone is basically a subnet. So which subnet you want to take, you can select here. So we have chosen the default one. So default subnet group has assigned to us. If you have creating your VPC, then you have a option to create your subnet. Now public access, do we want to access the database by public? When I say public access means we are asking to provide one public IP, because only if the this instance is having a public IP, then only it's possible to access outside the VPC. Otherwise, only the inside sources can access the database. So this time I want to provide public access. That means I want to assign one public IP to this instance. Then VPC security group. If already the security group has been created, you can use the existing one, or you can create a new. Let's say create a new security group. So let's say the security group, new security group is you can say RDS. Okay, SG RDS, so that we can easily recognize that this is one we have created for our RDS experiment. Then let's see what is given inside this. So it says that 3306 port has been provided for access. Later we can also, because we want to access through the SSH, So that runs on port number 22. So later we can also enable port number 22. So okay, we'll go here, and then uh, database authentication option. Okay, we have, this is already enabled actually with when we are using this this one kind of production, then this must be there. We have no choice to remove this. Password authentication is required to access this database. And then let's have a look here what is given inside here. So if you do not specify database name, Amazon RDS does not create a database. So you have to give a database name here. Okay, it says it is not required when you are going for multi-Azure database cluster. So we have chosen here multi-database Azure cluster, I guess. Let us see here what we have chosen here. And this we have chosen. So let's say we want to do with this multi Azure database instance here. You can also read this information is given here. So uh, basically this means that we want to create a copy of the instance in the other availability zone. This is basically a main of this multi AZ DB instance. So now if you see that now it's available here in the cluster case, we are not able to provide the name here, but let's say the name here is db1. This is we have provided. So it says use letters, numbers, and hyphen. Okay, something is wrong here. What does it basically it means? It sees a string of up to 64 alphanumeric characters that defines the name given to database that Amazon RDS creates when it creates a DB instance. As in my DB, if you do not specify a database name, okay, so we need to specify a name here, but it's mandatory. So if I write db1, then it is okay. Hyphens are not allowed here. So database name is db1. Then we move. Then automated backups you need. So if you enable this, that means you are saying that after a period of time you want to have a backup. Now this duration can you set? You can set 7 days, 5 days, and you can see it in 1 day, 2 days. So you can set up to 35 days. So let's say 7 days we want. If you disable this, then there is no option for us to create a backup. Let's say we don't need a backup this time. But when you are doing for a real scenario, then you have to be very careful and you have to design it very properly and looking to the company strategy that what is the duration you want to have a backup. But here we just want to see that backup option is also there where we can enable it. And then this is just keep it default here. And then rotation period, if you are keeping means if you are keeping a database, and then up to how much time it has to be kept. So you may say that whatever the copy you are keeping, it will be kept only for 7 days, or you want to keep it for 2 years. So this you want whenever you want to uh, delete any of the thing, then it will keep your database for this amount of time. Then we'll go down and then enable enhanced monitoring. So do you want to kind of enable the monitoring? So it is basically useful when you want to see how different processes or threads use the CPU. So that already we have discussed when we discussed about the CloudWatch, that how the monitoring works. So if you want to see that how your database has been accessed and utilized by different processes, different applications for a period of time, then we can make use of this option. So just we are keeping it disabled here, and reports we are keeping as it is. And then also, if there is many any minor version is going to upgrade, then it will automatically done for you by the provider. You need not worry. So if any version got updated of your database that you are using, it will automatically be taken care by the provider without affecting your entire database and the operations that you are doing on it. Then delete protection. This is basically if anyone want to delete the database, means for example, here we can ensure that any of the developing team cannot delete your database. So the admin can enable the deletion protection. So that means if by mistake or somehow someone wants to delete the database, it will not allow a person to delete. So if this is not enabled, then the one who has a permission to access the database can delete the database. Means if he is having all the rights on the database access, he can do create, update, uh, delete. Means all the permissions are given to any user, then he can also delete it. But if this is enabled, then he is not allowed to delete the table. So this is also one thing that can be noted and important for managing your entire database design. Then create the database. So database has been created, and you can just have a look. So we have used MySQL engine for our database, and the other things you can see here. This is the VPC and the security group. This is what we have created as GRDS. And then we can also go here, click on it, and you can scroll down there. You can see this inbound rules. So as we want to access it remotely, so we can set the inbound port here. So you can click on edit inbound rules. So you can see here that it has this 3306. Okay, MySQL and Aurora. Okay, so let's make it for anyone. So from anywhere, fine. And then we can also add a rule, and we want to add a port 22 for SSH, and we can also just make it from anywhere and then save the rules. So now it's visible here. We have now two ports are visible here, 3306 and 22. Okay, so all the basic configuration we have finished. Now our instance is created, and it is, as I said, it's already attached with the EBS. And now if you want to access it, you can demonstrate, you can realize or use it by creating one EC2. So you know how to create the EC2 instance. So you have to create one EC2 instance, and then you can connect that EC2 instance remotely. For example, if you create a Linux instance, then you can connect using a putty. If you are working on a Windows machine, you can use a putty and connect to your Linux instance, and then you can also access your database. So here we have seen that what exactly are the features provided to us in the RDS. what are the different fields available if you want to configure or create an instance of the relational database. So we have seen, and this is all that actually I need to discuss with you. So our instance has been created, and this is all that we want to see here. And one thing to keep in mind, that always delete your instance uh, after doing your work. It's always good to delete, so just to avoid any charges from the AWS. So let us delete this instance. Already we have seen what are the different fields are there and how to set up the this instance. Okay, so we'll go here and then say delete, because already we have set the enable the delete protection, so it does not allow us to delete, as we have already discussed that this means that you are not allowed to delete. So we have to disable that option. We'll go and then go to modify, and here we have to disable that option, then only it is allowed to delete. Now if you simply want to stop this instance, this RDS instance, the database instance that we have created, then it will allow you to stop. But if you want to delete, then it cannot be done unless you remove this feature. So here we have deletion protection. We can just disable it, continue, and just modify, you can say. It also asks to, do you want to create a snapshot? It's a copy of the database that you are deleting. So if you say yes, then it will create a snapshot. So it's also very important configuration while designing a database. So let's say I don't want this, then you can write delete me, and they will give you a message that they recommend to make a snapshot just to protect or make a backup copy of your database, but it does not need for me. So I acknowledge that I did not need and delete. Okay, so this is all for this exercise, and we'll see more in the next video. Thank you very much.